But we are going to pop into that QA. So Matt, do we have anything that has come down the pipe there that we might be able to help with?
Absolutely. And thanks, Rachel and Skye. That was very informative. So yeah, if you have any questions, just drop them in the Q&A in the Zoom UI here. We have one that's come in as you guys were speaking. In your experience, what kind of tools have you seen customers use to get privacy metrics, and how can Osano help?
Yeah, of course. We've seen. I'll take some of that and then lead it over to Rachel. We've seen a good handful of tools in use, right? We generally see customers who are who necessitate some sort of tooling to help with automating DPIAs, ROPAs, internal assessments that they are sending or receiving from vendors that they're working with if they are doing like their due diligence for when vendors come on. So we see that all the time. That is something Osano can help with on the ROPA, DPIA, and vendor assessment front. But we see that a lot. We see a lot of external evaluation tools being utilized. There's obviously consent management that allows you to manage browser-based consent, as well as universal consent, marketing-based consent, consent to be communicated with, consent to SMS messages, consent to be sent emails in the future, right? So we see a lot on the consent management side and getting data on those opt-in and opt-out rates. We see, like Rachel mentioned before, monitoring DSARs or data subject rights requests as they come in is a big need for tooling. We see a big need for tooling there to help at least manage or report on those requests and kind of keep them in an appropriate managed in an appropriate workflow. You get a lot of those, or we see customers get a lot of them through email or through various emails to different people. And there is a legal obligation to respond to those within a period of time. So having those kind of all together and being able to report on those as they come in, how long it takes you to complete them, not just for regulatory purposes, but also for internal headcount and planning purposes, is going to be really important. So having somebody to manage those as well. A lot of those that I mentioned, Osano can support, but I'll let Rachel touch on any others that she's seen in the market.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we use the Osano tooling as well internally for the reasons that Skye's mentioned. It gives us those insights. And I think just outside of the privacy sphere, where you're thinking about other departments that you can potentially get metrics from, I think there's definitely a great number of tools out there when you think about how to be creative and get those insights you need. So maybe you're working with your security team and they've got a phishing program in place. Maybe you can get those phishing metrics. So not necessarily a direct privacy tool, but just understanding how you can bring your privacy program to other parts of the business by looking to see what data they have there. And I think something like phishing metrics is great because it maybe indicates some training that you can do. It maybe indicates where you need to refine your ROPAs or your data mapping because maybe there's a gap in understanding. So some really great tools out there by connecting with other parts of the business for sure.
Great. Okay, we've got another question here that I'm curious about myself. So for companies that are in the B2B space and don't interact with customers, are there different priorities or recommendations rather than, B2C companies?
Sure. So I can take this, and Skye, feel free to chime in with anything you've got. But I think, yes, I think just knowing that you're B2B, probably the type of communication is going to be slightly different. I think in a B2C context, you're probably thinking about how you can make things a little bit more easy to understand, a little bit more accessible. In a B2B context, you're maybe not looking at it in quite the same way. So the priorities might be different. I think ultimately it probably comes down to, again, understanding what your priorities are and what your customer expectations are, and making sure that people are getting the information they need and are understood. But I think, yes, there will be nuances, but maybe the goals might be the same. It's just probably how you're executing on them might be slightly different.
Cool. So we have another question here regarding whether or not it's recommended to survey customers about their direct impressions regarding privacy trustworthiness, or should you instead simply monitor metrics related to customer behavior?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it's important to find out how customers perceive you. And I think it's really good to do that market analysis around what signals trust within your industry. So I think even if you're not wanting to get the insights from your customer, I think you definitely want to making sure you're tuned into the market that your customers are in. I think that can certainly help you bolster your program and mature it by actually delivering and meeting their expectations. I think we've spoken a lot about compliance today, but actually I think what customers are seeing is it's not just about being compliant, it's about delivering on your customer expectations, and that will certainly vary in the industry, but trust will be a huge part of that, and making sure you can address that is going to be key for some of those relationships. Skye, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you and I were having this conversation about trustworthiness when we were kind of exploring trustworthy brands from the B2C side and trustworthy brands from the B2B side, and what is included in that trust, what customers kind of perceive as included in trustworthiness for a brand. And some of it is going to be public perception. So keeping a monitor on like your trust radius and your G2 reviews and general customer sentiment is going to give you a good insight into that. Do I think that actually surveying our customers on just our privacy standpoint is going to be a useful data point? I don't know if I would agree with that entirely, but I think to Rachel's point, using it as a piece of the puzzle rather than the entirety of the puzzle, like when we're talking about trustworthiness, we're talking about a lot more than just your privacy stance. I think that's probably more of an accurate representation of, to Rachel's point, customer perception.
Cool. So another question we have here is whether or not there are buckets of metrics that are common across most privacy programs.
Sure. I'm not sure if there are necessarily common buckets. I know that there's various reports out there. I think the Future of Privacy Forum has a metrics report that's got some sample metrics. But I think probably the common ones I would see are just getting started on how many. I think that's probably the volume-based metrics. How many times am I seeing this come up? How many requests am I receiving? How many impact assessments I'm doing? I think right now there's a lot of privacy pros that are trying to make the case for additional support as their privacy programs are growing. And I think that's probably where the metrics for volume is certainly very important. But yeah, I'm curious, Skye, what do you see on the customer side?
Yeah, I think that's a really good take. The first thing customers start with us or mention that they are tracking with us is account of how many DPIAs, account of how many times they have been asked for a SOC 2 when they are putting a bid out for a customer, account of how many people have opted into the category of marketing. And that might be from an overall privacy perspective or from a marketing specific perspective. But to Rachel's point, it really starts out as simply as let's count what we're getting. And then we can associate this count with load and effort. And then we can actually start being critical thinkers about the data that we're getting back and expounding upon that.
Awesome. All right, next question here. What are some meaningful privacy by design metrics?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it could be simple as how many, again, like the volume-based ones, how many impact assessments are you doing? It could be some around how many checklists are you completing? Maybe if you're building a product, you have a checklist before you go to market and you're getting ready to launch. It could also be looking at the number of controls or features that you have. So I think it's depending on how you're using privacy by design. Is it product-based? Is it internal for process-driven design? But I think it could be probably volume-based to start with, and then it can get more mature to think about more granularity of the controls. But that's a great question.
Yeah, we do see some LMS monitoring too, Rachel. I think on that, talking about privacy by design around like how many courses that are security or privacy focused are our new employees required to take on a yearly basis? What are the outcomes of those? And are we making adjustments to solve for gaps in those trainings? So to Rachel's point, it really depends on where the focus is. Is it on the product that you're offering? Is it on a feature set? Is it on a service? Is it on the people that are providing that service?
Yeah.
Okay, next one. How can a company ensure that the privacy metrics established are the right ones that accurately reflect the state of its privacy program?
I think, it's probably going to be a bit of trial and error, to be honest. I think as you're starting out, you're going to find that some resonate more than others. And I think it's not an exact science. I think you're probably going to have to try some and see where you get the most support, and try and deliver that way. I think the most important thing is that you're really trying to give an accurate representation of your privacy program. The idea of metrics is to help to articulate where you need support, where you need buy-in, where you're doing well, where you're not doing well. So I think as your program changes and as your program evolves, you're probably going to see that your metrics will change over time as well. But at least that's what I would have been imagining. But Skye, what are your thoughts from the customer side as well?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to a lot of other metrics that we track internally, right? There's 2 times that I'm tracking metrics. One is to monitor the state of my current organization to make sure it's operating at a particular level, and the other is when I want something. My boss is always very much a don't come to me and ask for something if you can't tell me why you want it. And he is also very much a, I would also like some numbers or at least some quantitative evidence to back that up. It can't just be qualitative. So we can't just talk about it. I need to know why you want it. So I think that's a really good point is, we found that certain metrics don't matter. Certain metrics that we were tracking for like 2 years didn't actually matter. It didn't actually affect the customer experience in any way. So we sunset them after 2 years and replaced them with something that we think would matter more as our organization grew and as we kind of became, solidified in that org, right? So I think to Rachel's point, it is going to be a lot of trial and error, and you're going to measure the wrong ones first, and then you'll adjust and grow and pivot. But when you're asking for something like headcount, like budget, like new tools, that's when metrics really, really shine in an organization alongside the monitoring our current posture to make sure we're executing at a particular level.
Okay, last question here. I think it's a pretty interesting one. If you're early on in establishing a privacy program, do you recommend focusing first on metrics for internal use / buy-in? So for reporting, operational efficiency, or external customer-facing use. So for storytelling, marketing, and brand building.
That's a great question. And it's probably going to be an it depends answer from me, because I think it's probably going to be dependent on what the challenges you're experiencing are. I think the preference would be probably for those internal metrics, probably for the reasons that are in volume and getting your program started and making sure that you're addressing compliance concerns and you're able to facilitate that organic growth. But it could be that depending on where you are, some of those risks that you're seeing and you're wanting to highlight are externally driven as well. So I think it's going to depend on your stakeholders and what your risks are and ultimately what your goals are. But I think starting off with internal metrics from a compliance perspective and to help build up that foundational element of volume is very important. But it could certainly be a combination of both for some organizations and still be the right approach to take.
Okay, great. Well, that's the last question we have in the Q&A here. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out and attending.